What's going on, guys? It's Clutch Plays here, and this past week has been pretty crazy for the Knicks as the NBA trade deadline made the Knicks reevaluate everything and make some serious changes. The trade deadline was expected to be pretty hectic for this underperforming Knicks squad, but there is no way anyone could have predicted that the Knicks would hire Steve Mills and then hire a brand new president of basketball operations in Leon Rose. I will get more into this move later on in the video, but on top of this, the Knicks finally got rid of Marcus Morris. This trade didn't really change anything for the Knicks though, as they still beat the Magic by 2 points in a game that was very close down the stretch. The Knicks did choke a bit at the end, but overall, Elfrid Payton and his 8 steals were the reason we won this game. Mike Miller is now 12-18 in his first 30 games, and David Fizdale was 4-18. So can you please tell me again why Fizdale wasn't the problem? The Knicks are currently sitting at the 5th best odds for the draft lottery after last night, but they are also 6 games behind the Magic for the 8th seed. Before everyone goes crazy, trying to win games and making the playoffs with our veterans may be the worst thing we can do right now. If we somehow get the 8th seed, we'll be swept by Giannis and miss the draft lottery, which will suck because the 15th to 25th picks in this year's draft are very close in talent with each other. Winning games is usually good in any situation, but the worst thing about winning is that the veterans are carrying us right now. Having RJ, Mitch, DSJ, Frank, and Kevin Knox on the bench for the majority of the game versus the Magic is extremely confusing and makes that win pretty meaningless. Also, our draft odds get worse with each win. Now that the tank season is approaching, we should get ahead of teams in the loss column instead of behind them. Talking about the draft though, we did receive a first round pick from the Clippers in the Marcus Morris trade, which will probably be around the 25th to 28th pick this year. The Marcus Morris trade did have a bit of controversy along with it, but we'll get into grading that whole situation later. However, with that said, let's get right into grading the Knicks NBA trade deadline. Number 1, the firing of Steve Mills. The firing of Steve Mills was pretty surprising, not because he was fired, but because of the timing of this firing. Dolan must have been pissed off at Mills for trying to keep Marcus Morris, or Dolan could have done this because MSG chanted sell the team, so he had to do something to fix his image. This move was much awaited, and thank goodness Dolan fired him before the trade deadline because he was ready to buy players like Andre Drummond and Dennis Schroeder instead of selling our own veteran players. The crazy thing to think about this is since Andre Drummond ended up going for close to nothing, knowing how Steve Mills had interest in Drummond on multiple occasions, Drummond would probably be a New York Knick right now. On top of this, Perry and Mills disagreed on multiple things, like Mills wanted Fizdale and Perry wanted the multiple-time Coach of the Year Mike Budenholzer, and on top of this, Perry wanted to take RJ in the draft, but Mills would have rather traded down and take a player like Garland or Cam Reddish who the Knicks had interest in. And finally, Mills wanted to trade for D'Lo and include the 2021 unprotected New York Knicks first-round pick. I agree with Perry on every single thing on the list, and I know a lot of you guys may have wanted D'Lo, but adding him to our team would put us into the 7 to 8 seed, praying that RJ and Mitch will become a top 10 NBA player so that we could compete for a championship. D'Lo will never be a first option on a championship team, and adding him to this team would probably put us into a long-lasting cycle of mediocrity. As fun as D'Lo would be to watch on the Knicks, his defense is atrocious, and his impact on the team is not nearly as crazy as the stats say. Also, if we really wanted him this bad, we would have signed him in the offseason when we could have. Perry wants to build through the draft and create sustainable success, which was the plan preached to us by the front office. Some other moves Mills was trying to make were DSJ for Monk and Marcus Morris for Aaron Holiday. 4 point guards on this team would be a complete mess, and we don't really need another young shooting guard. However, that trade wouldn't be as bad. Overall, I think it's very safe to say that the Knicks received an A+ for getting this huge cancer out of their organization, who's only had losing seasons when with the Knicks for about 20 years. Number 2, the Leon Rose signing. The signing was a bit puzzling at first, especially since Masai Ujiri was said to be paving his way to get to the Knicks, but it could have been much worse. This was completely rushed by Dolan, but the consensus among the Knicks for Leon Rose must have been so strong that there was no need to wait. The Knicks were not willing to give up the necessary assets to get Masai Ujiri to New York, which would have at minimum been 2 first-round picks. Leon Rose came from the CAA agency, which is an agency very interconnected with the New York Knicks according to one NBA executive. Some of his clients include Carmelo Anthony, Donovan Mitchell, Zion Williamson, Karl Anthony Towns, Devin Booker, and much more. The reasoning to sign a president of basketball operations with little to no experience, according to Woj, would be to have connections around the league with players in other teams. The connections would be with Cat and Donovan Mitchell along with a few other players, but no significant free agents until 2022 in Donovan Mitchell, which hopefully if we stick to plan, should be about when the Knicks start to compete for a championship. And Donovan's in the mediocre cycle of the Utah Jazz, so I bet he wouldn't mind coming to New York if they can build a good core of young players around him. This signing makes sense because he has connections with a lot of the up-and-coming players, as well as some very interesting head coach candidates like John Calipari and Jeff Van Gundy. Mike Miller should seriously be looked at for the job because he's been incredible this season, but John Calipari would be a great developmental coach. On top of these connections, Rose is heavily respected around the league and makes the Knicks a very trustworthy front office according to the New York Post. Leon Rose comes to the Knicks as a package with William Wesley, also known as Worldwide West, who's connected with John Calipari, LeBron, Drake, and many more current NBA players. He knows the game of basketball extremely well and will be a great addition to the staff. Overall, the Knicks would probably be a bit better off with a president who has experience, but this signing transforms the Knicks into a trustworthy, respected front office. This is brand new for the Knicks, and for this reason they receive a B+. Number 3, the Marcus Morris trade. In the Marcus Morris trade, the Knicks give up Marcus Morris and take in Mo Harkless, Yusuf Sanin, the Clippers' 2020 first-round pick, which is going to be about 25th to 28th in the draft, the Pistons' 2021 second-round pick, and a 2021 pick swap with the Clippers. Marcus Morris has had a lot of value on the market. The Knicks got exactly what they wanted for him. With a brand new front office being implemented, the Knicks seem to rather attain future assets to give to them instead of getting Mfiondu or Terrence Mann. Also, the Knicks didn't want to have an open roster spot, so they decided to take a second-round pick from the Pistons in 2020, which is probably going to be the 31st pick. It's upsetting that we didn't get Kabagele, but he was the 27th pick in this past year's draft and is still in the G League. He has a ton of potential to be a good player, but at the same time, the difference between Yusuf Sanin and the Pistons' second-round pick, which is probably going to be the 31st after the rebuild, is very close to Mfiondu or Terrence Mann. The Knicks get a first-round pick that, as of right now, is the 27th overall in this year's draft, which gives us 4 first-round picks in the next 2 years. From this trade, here are all the picks that we will have in the next 2 drafts. Marcus Morris's departure gives players like Ignas, Kevin Knox, and RJ Barrett more of a role in the offense, and as we saw yesterday, the ball movement was very good without Marcus Morris. Now, if this was just a coincidence or not is uncertain, but if it is, it makes sense. The future is looking even more bright with this trade, and for this reason, the Knicks receive an A. Number 4, the Knicks' overall grade. The Knicks had a pretty great trade deadline, however their overall grade from the trade deadline is a B+. The reason for this is because all the moves they made were pretty great and all deserving of a grade of B+ or higher, but they didn't make enough moves. The amount of veterans on short-term deals taking up minutes on the Knicks roster is way too high. Some players who should have been traded are Bobby Portis, who heaves 3-point shots, Alonzo Trier, who will probably leave in free agency because he's upset with his playing time, Wayne Ellington, who should have never been signed with the Knicks in the first place, and most importantly, DSJ Frank or Alfred, because the 3-point guard rotation doesn't work. I understand why keeping Bobby Portis, Wayne, and the point guards are not terrible because they can be traded during the offseason or during the draft, but Alonzo Trier is just going to walk in free agency. I find it extremely hard that a team would not be willing to give up a second-round pick for him, heck, even a player overseas. Finally, why on earth is Wayne Ellington still on the Knicks? Buy him out already, gosh dang it. In Scott Perry's defense, he was put into a hard situation after Mills was fired, since Mills was calling the shots and Perry had no previous deals in place for the players listed. Waiting until the end of the season is not the worst case scenario, because the Knicks still have him under contract and everything, so that is why the Knicks grade is not below a B+. The trade deadline was pretty successful for the Knicks and shows that we actually have a plan for the future as of right now. Now I hope that doesn't change with Leon Rose, but if it does, then yikes. Tell me what you guys thought about the Knicks trade deadline, and if you thought it was good or bad. Tell me what grades you guys think the Knicks deserve based on their actions at the NBA trade deadline, and what grade you would give for each move they made. This whole week has been so chaotic, and now we can finally relax and wait for the draft lottery. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and now I'm out, and peace!